I am delighted to be still around to send greetings to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis on the occasion of the celebration of the birthday and the life of Dr. Sir Kennedy Simmonds, my contemporary. We worked together over the years, and we are that generation who took over from the older labor leaders who struggled so much to bring development in the early days of these islands. I had the pleasure of dealing with Robert Bradshaw in Southwell when I was elected in the 70s. And I remember fondly when the British terminated the support for East Caribbean dollar with a pound. And Bradshaw and I went up to London to have discussions with the Bank of England. I was delighted to welcome Kennedy into that fold. In fact, as a matter of fact, he was elected shortly ahead of me as Prime Minister. And we worked in that period of the Cold War when the Americans and the British were very concerned about the socialist and communist influences in the Caribbean. Remember, that was the time when Grenada was the bastion of socialist dictatorship at the time. And the US government came in to help us in the Caribbean rescue that situation. Kennedy and I were among that group that met with President Reagan in Grenada. And it was as a result of our solid support from the US that we got a lot of aid from the organization called USAID. And we were quite happy when Kennedy was able to get the last big tranche of money from USAID to do the infrastructure and the roads and telephones, etc., in the southeast peninsula of St. Kitts, which was really a barren area, totally undeveloped. And that is an area now that is spurring the development of St. Kitts. So the people of St. Kitts have got to be thankful to Kennedy for the work that he did, particularly that I know about in that eastern peninsula. He supported me too with the securing funds from the European Union for the Bequia Airport. And what I learned then, I was able to make available to them to assist them in getting the extension of the Nevis Airport and subsequently the extension of the airport in the British Virgin Islands. One early event that is important to record is the decisions we took collectively in Mustique on the problems stemming from a so-called rigged election in Guyana. After President Bonham died and President Hoyt took over, Prime Minister Dame Eugenia Charles was most upset, and she declared that we should kick Guyana out of CARICOM. I was not happy with that. I was friendly with Hoyt. I knew him quite well. And I knew Dr. Jagan also quite well. Because whenever I went to Guyana, even though I was a guest of the Bonham government, I used to have dinner with Cheddi Jagan and his wife. So I was concerned about the democratic process and hosted a meeting in St. Kitts, in Mustique. Kennedy very graciously came along all the way from St. Kitts Eugenia came down, Brice and John came across from Barbados, Tom Adams had already died, and Blaise from Grenada. And we discussed the Guyana situation and came to conclusions which we really did not publicize at the time, as we did not want to embarrass President Hoyt. But we got him to agree that any future election in Guyana would be monitored with observers, not only local observers in the Caribbean, but international observers. And in the meantime, there are certain things he had to do to lift the ban on the importation of newsprint into Guyana, because the newspapers were starved of paper to produce their opinions in Guyana, which is freedom of the press can't work if there is not paper available to communicate the media. Secondly, we got Hoyt to undertake that he will lift the ban on flour, because if he claimed that the Indians were supporting him, at long last they should be able to get flour cheaply, because at that time flour was being sold down there in Guyana at $800 a bag and all kinds of ridiculous prices. And I pointed out to President Hoyt that the shrimp boats were coming up from Guyana. I was buying the shrimps myself and a hotel from them at good prices and helping them to get flour from the flour mill in St. Vincent to smuggle into Guyana. So that was absolute nonsense. You should cut out all of that. He had difficulty convincing the party, because some of them said, well, Bonham isn't dead too long and you're scrapping all of his policies. But we had to help Guyana to come back into the mainstream of development. The other thing was, of course, we worked together in the creation of the Caribbean Democratic Union, which was a facility we organized particularly to train the young people about economic development. We held seminars to explain to them how the World Bank and the IMF worked and what were the principles of democracy and so on. It was a pleasure to work with Kennedy, and it was a pleasure to meet with him again recently in St. Lucia as the guest of the St. Lucia government and Lady Janice Compton at the unveiling of the statue of Sir John Compton. On that occasion, I wanted to find out more about from Kennedy about how he reconciled his position with Anguilla, because to me it was rather ironical that after he left government and lost government, it was Anguilla that provided an opportunity for him to practice medicine. And then he pointed out to me that in fact, Anguilla was the first place he had practiced medicine, and Anguilla is the first part of the tri-nation state where his party had won an election. So I went on to tell him, you should really start writing your memoirs. And any help I can give you, I certainly will, because it is important that we record what we did and don't leave it for others to scramble to find notes to say what contribution we made. It was Kennedy who settled the constitutional situation with St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla, and finally assisting Nevis into getting its own status, and he has made an indelible mark on St. Kitts. It is unfortunate that the Constitution of St. Kitts did not have a clause that spelled out the procedures in Parliament for holding no confidence motions. I sincerely hope that that will be addressed in some way permanently in the future, and the existing sad situation of St. Kitts functioning without Parliament being functioning, I hope that blot on our career will be removed in the Caribbean. I had my problem when I was in opposition, when the Constitution here was amended to deprive me as leader of the opposition. I was glad to see that Kennedy is still in such good health. I wish him all the best, and I congratulate you, the people of St. Kitts, for deciding that it was high time that you recognize his contribution and hold a ceremony like this, which I gather you're having, to honor him. Good evening.